You see here a set of playing cards. You have all had the experience of shuffling cards. But what you didn't realize when you shuffled the cards is that you were doing something that no one else in the world had ever done before. Here's why. If you shuffle 2 cards, the possible combinations that can come about are 2. If you shuffle 3 cards, the possible combinations are 6. 4 cards brings about 24 possible combinations. 5 bring 120, and so forth. But how many different combinations can you get from shuffling 52 cards? Here is the answer. It's a very large number. In fact, it's so large that it is impossible for any of us to comprehend. But what does this have to do with economics? Think about the number of both physical and human resources available in the world and the number of different ways that they can be arranged. All the workers with their varied skills, the coal and iron, the chickens and geese, the rivers and factories, the land and buildings, the classrooms and parks, the silicon chips and dump trucks, the superhighways and the information highway. The number of combinations of these resources is in the hundreds of trillions, but most of these combinations would not work well together and would be useless. For example, you would not want to hire me to do brain surgery, or even to give you golf lessons. In the same way, you would not want to hire my wife to be your interior decorator. Or you would not want to hire LeBron James to design software, or Ben Roethlisberger to be your moral advisor, or Bernie Madoff to be your financial advisor. If we randomly assign these resources, nothing would be produced and we would all starve to death. But the world of resources is not random. How then can we combine these resources in the best way? The answer is through private property and free markets. Private property ensures that resource arrangements will not be random. In a market system, each resource will choose a course of action that brings about the highest reward compared to other choices. The incentive for profit and income provides an incentive to use the resources in a way that best satisfies others. This is what Adam Smith described as the invisible hand of competition. It is not to be confused with the very visible foot of government that tends to trip things up. Our wise men in Washington believe, though, that they know better than the market how an economy works and how to allocate resources. They believe that they can design a healthcare system, a financial system, or an educational system that works better than what the market could create. But history has shown that these markets are far too complicated for even the wisest people to plan. Resources are vast and their combinations are too many and too complex for any planner to comprehend. Think of all the doctors, nurses, hospitals, clinics, drug producers, chemists, biologists, patients, lab technicians, and thousands of other resources that go into a healthcare industry that is 17% of our economy. Who could plan such a market or predict what it will look like in 5, 10, or 25 years from now? The answer is no one. Only the free market can begin to deal with such complexity. Here is the person who more than anyone else is responsible for teaching us that truth. This is Frederick Hayek. It is because of Hayek that I spend so much time in my classes teaching not what economics can do, but what governments cannot do. How important is it for an economic system to allow for and defend private property rights? With property rights, when property rights cease to exist, we observe what Garrett Hardin, a biologist, once described as the tragedy of the commons. Here is an example. On the left, you see commonly owned property. On the right is privately owned property. When the private land is turned into common land, this is what happened. The lakes and the green areas turn to desert. People take care of what they own and have an incentive to preserve its value for future generations. There are no such incentives for commonly owned property, and the commonly owned property becomes overused and deteriorates. A good example of the tragedy of the commons is the refrigerator in the faculty lounge. It is usually not a pleasant experience to open it. Why? Because no one owns it, but everybody has the right to use it. Much of the world's poverty can be explained by a lack of property rights that exists in many lesser developed countries. In his book, The Mystery of Capital, Hernando de Soto points out these facts about acquiring property rights in certain countries. For example, in the Philippines, it takes 168 steps and 13 to 25 years to acquire a formal deed to property. In Egypt, it takes 77 steps and 6 to 14 years to acquire a legal claim to property. In Lima, Peru, it takes 728 steps with 17 different government agencies. Here is a flow chart for Haiti. If you don't understand it, don't feel alone. The Haitians don't understand it either. They only know that it takes 4,112 days, or over 11 years, to obtain a deed to property. It is obvious why Haiti is a poor country and why the recent earthquake has been so devastating to them. The death toll for the quake was 230,000 people, compared to the same magnitude of earthquake that hit California in 1998, where only 63 people lost their lives. Wealth saves lives, and the key to wealth is private property rights. The problem, according to De Soto, has nothing to do with culture, but everything to do with the failure of the country to adequately define property rights. He estimates that there is $9.3 trillion in what he calls dead capital in these countries, capital that is not used to create wealth. Here is another example, a night satellite photo of North and South Korea. In the North, you have no property rights and oppression. In the South, you have freedom, private property, and a wealthy country. The single light in the North is from Kim Jong-il watching cartoons on his big screen TV. The difficulty in defining property rights in these countries prevents them from attracting foreign investment. Investment cannot be made without well-defined property rights. These countries do not need foreign aid. They need capital investment, and this investment cannot come about without radical changes in the way land ownership is defined. Here's a view of the economic history of the world in one picture. As you can see, for the first 3,800 years of the graph, the world was stuck in what is known as the Malthusian trap. As the population rose, the world ran out of resources to feed itself, leaving humanity in a permanent stagnant phase. But something happened around the year 1800 that changed all this: the Industrial Revolution, which allowed resources to expand far faster than population, resulting in increasing standards of living for the peoples of the world. Ironically, it was at this time that Malthus was making his prediction that mankind was doomed to a subsistence level of income. He was right about the past, but dead wrong about the future. As you can see, the world economy took off like a rocket with the Industrial Revolution. The divergence on the chart refers to the differing rates of growth of various countries over the past 200 years. A major area in the field of economics is the study of what makes countries grow. Here's the person who I believe has contributed more than any to explain what makes economies grow. This is Joseph Schumpeter. He was born in Austria, educated in Vienna, and spent the last 20 years of his life teaching at Harvard. He once pointed out that he had 3 objectives in life: to be the greatest economist in the world, the greatest horseman in the world, and the greatest lover in the world. Late in his life, he stated he had accomplished 2 of the 3 goals, but would not say which 2. Schumpeter's thesis was that the engine driving the economy was embodied in the ideas and actions of the entrepreneur, the person who directs the resources, takes the risks, and creates the new ways of doing things. These are people like Henry Ford, Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, Sam Walton. What they created gave us not only something new, but also destroyed whatever it replaced. This is what Schumpeter called the perennial gale of creative destruction. When something new is created, it destroys the old process, but the new way is better and uses resources in a more efficient way than what it replaced. The economy grows larger, and we are all a little wealthier as a result. Here's the modern version of Schumpeter. This is Paul Romer. His thesis is that the sources of economic growth are the new recipes that entrepreneurs create by combining resources in different and new ways. One of his concrete examples has to do with the paper coffee cups given out at Starbucks, Heavenly Grounds, and their competitors. As recently as 1995, there were different size lids for small, medium, and large cups. Someone came up with the idea to make all the lids the same size. This small change in the geometry of the cup reduced the cost of serving the coffee. It made it easier for the employees to replenish the stock of cups and made it a little easier for customers to get their coffee. How much of a savings is this? It's probably quite small, maybe a cent or less for every 10 or 100 or 1,000 cups served. But when you multiply the saving over all the coffee shops, fast food stores, and any other business using paper cups, the saving is substantial. Of course, this little discovery does not compare to the big ideas like the discovery of the transistor, antibiotics, the steam engine, or the silicon chip. But millions of tiny discoveries like these add up to vast savings of resources, freeing those resources for more productive uses and generating growth in the economy. The vast majority of these discoveries come from engineers, mathematicians, and scientists, and Romer believes it should be a priority of government to encourage more of them. Take the example of a gold rush and gold rush participants panning for gold. If one person is panning for gold, no gold is likely to be found. But if 1,000 people are panning, the odds of finding gold go up considerably. Romer's notion is that the more scientists, engineers, and mathematicians there are, the greater will be the rate of growth in the economy, because these are the miners for ideas that enhance productivity, and productivity is the key to increased wealth.